The country was going to collapse anyways after we left, and look what happened. And we keep listening to people like Benjamin Netanyahu, who said, after we invade Iraq, we'll be greeted as liberators, and it'll start a chain reaction, and there'll be democracy in the Middle East. These people couldn't be more wrong.
So much for joining us, especially during these very, very busy times. As you know, Israel is vowing to press on with its assault on Hezbollah in Lebanon, despite the U.S. push for a ceasefire. How likely do you think an Israeli ground invasion of Lebanon is?
Well, Wolf, the Prime Minister has been clear that his goal is to get Israeli civilians who have been displaced from their homes in the north back to their homes as soon as possible. We believe the best way to do that is through diplomacy. And that's why you've seen President Biden lead the effort to get a ceasefire, 21-day ceasefire, so that diplomacy can take place. So we would hope that we don't see a ground incursion, because if that happens, there is a chance that the conflict could broaden into what could be a regional conflict. Again, we think the best solution going forward is a diplomatic solution.
All right, here's what blows my mind. Israel's in the escalation dominance phase of them trying to end the war. And now the United States is trying to come along saying, hey, let's try diplomacy and actually try to have peace with Lebanon. And that has been rejected outright by Benjamin Netanyahu, which means the United States has two choices at this point. Let Israel do whatever it wants and continue to not listen to the United States. Or we actually use our leverage. We just sent them $6 billion in military aid, but the United States doesn't want to do that. We can keep suggesting things to our Israeli counterparts. They're not listening to us. Hell, they're not even listening to their defense minister who's saying we need to find Palestinian actors to replace Hamas. And the United States is like, yeah, we agree with that. So we keep sending over diplomats to tell them, hey, we would really like you to actually try to make peace with Lebanon and not escalate the conflict. And Israel's like, that's nice. We're not going to listen to you anyways. Which just makes the Biden administration look comically weak.
You say the conflict could broaden. Are you concerned that Iran, which is an ally of Hezbollah, would get involved? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yes, Wolf, that there is that possibility. There's also a possibility that we could see greater activity from other groups like the Houthis or the Iraqi Shia militia groups. And so we want to see this, want to see the tensions taken down, and we want to see things resolved diplomatically if possible.
Then use your leverage, sir. It's very simple. If they're not going to listen to us, then leverage the foreign aid that we give them. And we all know if Israel goes to war with Iran, the United States is going to get dragged into it as well. At this point, if Israel wants to go after Lebanon, that's their business. But no American should be sent over to go die in case Iran joins in.
What are the implications, do you think, of an all-out war between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon? And I ask the question because the U.S. has already started sending additional troops and equipment to the region. What would be the extent of U.S. support for Israel in that scenario?
Well, Wolf, an all-out war between Lebanese Hezbollah and Israel would be devastating for both Lebanon and Israel. And again, we anticipate that we'd see a number of people displaced, casualties that equal or exceed what we've seen in Gaza. And so, again, the best way forward, in our view, is a diplomatic effort, a diplomatic solution. And that's why you're seeing so many countries, the leaders of so many countries, come forward and say, we need to work together to ensure that we get an immediate ceasefire for at least 21 days, allow that diplomacy to take place, and from there, we can hopefully get the Israeli citizens back to their homes in the north. And also, we would perhaps see an opening to get a ceasefire in Gaza and a return of the hostages, which we very much want to see.
Lloyd Austin can claim that he wants all these things, but until you actually have real leverage in negotiations, they're just suggestions. What blows my mind is Israel's a client state of the United States. Why is the US so unwilling to try to change the behavior of the Israeli leaders? Simply withholding weapons and saying, hey, you're going to actually start listening to what we're telling you. And recently the State Department came out and said there was actually real claims of trying to starve the people of Gaza. And we have laws to actually not send weapons to countries that do this. But Anthony Blinken ignored that. These people are just a bunch of warmongers, and if we get dragged into a fight with Iran, it's Joe Biden's fault, it's Anthony Blinken's fault, it's Lloyd Austin's fault, which would literally be a disaster because Iran is much bigger than Iraq, and it's literally in a mountain fortress. And in retrospect, the lefties were right when they were like, yeah, Iraq is a bad idea, we probably shouldn't go into Iraq. Hell, I don't know why we stayed in Afghanistan after we got rid of bin Laden. The country was going to collapse anyways after we left, and look what happened. And we keep listening to people like Benjamin Netanyahu, he said, after we invade Iraq, we'll be greeted as liberators, and it'll start a chain reaction, and there'll be democracy in the Middle East. These people couldn't be more wrong.
What's the point now of deploying additional troops and U.S. equipment to the region over there?
Well, Wolf, as you know, I already have a lot of combat power in the region. Of course, we are a planning organization. We plan for all contingencies, and we'll be ready for any contingencies. And so, any event that we have to address one of a number of contingencies, we will have the right assets and people in place to be able to do that.
If Iran joins in, we're joining in too. That's exactly what he means by that. He doesn't actually want to say it, being like, hey, there's going to be a new war in the Middle East under us. So, I mean, I can't actually say this because it would be deeply unpopular and probably would cost Kamala Harris the election. And what he means by contingencies is trying to pressure Iran, hey, don't get involved.
Let's talk about Gaza. I want to get to that. It's obviously a critically important issue right now. Israel, as you probably know, struck a school sheltering displaced Palestinians yesterday. They say it was a Hamas target, but women and children were killed, and analysis shows that Israel used a U.S. bomb in that strike. When these strikes are a regular occurrence and the death toll is now in Gaza, we're told by Gaza officials, more than 41,000, how can you say Israel is using weapons in accordance with international law?
Well, again, the Israelis are a professional force, and they do have policies and procedures that are the right policies and procedures. But again, you've heard me say a number of times, Wolf, the death toll has the number of civilian casualties has been far too high. We would like to see things to see them do things in a different way, and I'll continue to press that issue every time I talk to my counterpart, Mr. Gallant. And you probably know that I talk to him at least every week, and sometimes a couple of times a week.
You just suggesting things are just suggestions. You temporarily pausing one weapons shipment is not going to get their attention. Saying the United States is no longer giving you weapons, I guarantee that would get their attention. And Gallant in all of this has actually been the voice of reason somewhat. He said, hey, I'm not going to allow Israeli troops to reoccupy Gaza. Hey, we need to find new Palestinian actors to replace Hamas. But the political leadership in Israel is not listening to their own defense minister. But at the end of the day, I keep asking the question, is the United States really a superpower?
With him, or is there conflict there in your conversations with him?
There's not conflict, Wolf, but again, I continue to believe that the civilian casualty rate is too high, and things can be done a bit differently in terms of their approach.
This month alone, Mr. Secretary, Israel has struck at least 10 school shelters. We're talking about in Gaza. It struck the designated safe zone of El Mawasi and near 3 polio vaccination centers. Does that pattern amount, from your perspective, to a violation of international law?
Holy crap, Wolf Blitzer's being a journalist and asking real questions. I'm shocked. This guy's literally been a robot his entire life. But look, he's actually pressing one of the U.S. officials saying, hey, is this a violation of international law?
Hamas deliberately uses civilians as shields. It places its headquarters and its logistical sites underneath schools and hospitals, and you name it. Again, it has done that from the very beginning, continues to do that, and that's what makes this a very difficult situation even more difficult. So Hamas, I call upon Hamas to cease in that type of activity, and I believe if they do, then we'll see a different outcome in terms of the types of civilian casualties that we've seen.
I'd be remiss not to give the Israeli side of this. Yes, Hamas does hide behind civilians. Yes, their strategy is literally to inflict as much harm and death upon the people of Gaza. They literally said we will sacrifice the children in order to achieve political goals. But my question is, if you can be so targeted and you can kill a Hamas leader in Tel Aviv, violating Iran's sovereignty, putting that aside, then why do you have to drop 2,000-pound bombs in certain areas? They would argue they're trying to get at the tunnels, but 2,000-pound bombs are by definition indiscriminate.
As you know, Israel now says it has just secured an additional $8.7 billion military aid package from the United States. Does it concern you that despite this unwavering U.S. support, Prime Minister Netanyahu undermined the Gaza ceasefire talks and is ignoring U.S. calls to de-escalate right now with Hezbollah in Lebanon?
Well, if we're going to continue to work with their diplomats, we're going to continue to work with their leadership to do everything we can to get a ceasefire so that diplomacy can take place. And we've been clear from the very beginning that we're going to support Israel in its efforts to defend itself. We've done that from the very beginning, and we're going to continue to do that going forward.
I don't know what happened, but it looks like Wolf Blitzer decided to be a journalist, and it blows my mind that he's the one asking good questions, being like, hey, we just sent them $8 billion. Shouldn't they listen to the position of the United States? And Lloyd Austin's answer is just, yeah, we're just going to support them no matter what, even if they continue to not listen to us.